Hey, you're listening to the Real 96 Podcast, a deep dive into all the movies of 1996. Well, most of them, 25 years later. Now here's your host, Nathan Ludwig.
And welcome back to the very second episode of the Real 96 Podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Nathan Ludwig. Well, we had a few technical difficulties for our first episode, but that's to be expected for a lot of first podcasts. We have fixed the issue of the weird echo kind of feedback going on in that first episode, so if you stuck with us and you like the content, you're in luck because we've vastly improved the audio quality for this episode and every episode going forward. So thank you for sticking with us. Dunstan checks in. That was a fun episode with Jeff and Bob. We've brought Jeff Frumess back, along with author and screenwriter James Fox, to talk about BioDome. Probably the first movie of 1996, as far as these revisits are concerned, that I just straight up hated. Well, that might be a strong word. I definitely didn't like it. So, with that said, we're going to jump right into BioDome. Before we do, though, I want to remind you to follow us on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. You can find us at The Real 96 Podcast. We've got all that stuff set up. You can email us at real96podcast@gmail.com if you have suggestions or you want to check and see if we're going to cover a specific film. I'll be able to tell you right away. You can also find us on Letterboxd. I have The Real 96 Podcast films list, exactly 200 films that we're going to cover this year. I had to cut it at 200 films, but we're covering all the big ones, all the memorable ones, all the cult ones that people are talking about or going to want to talk about. So we've got you covered there, but check it out on Letterboxd. I will link that on social media coming soon. Without further ado, let's jump into BioDome, a weird cult mess of a film that confounded the shit out of me. And wherever you lie on the BioDome spectrum, you're going to get the business end of this audio podcast shotgun, I guess. That's not really too much of a descriptor. Anyways, we talk about everything from, we go on all kinds of tangents, including Reservoir Dogs, Saturday Night Live, and also, remake this. And we have a couple weird theories about how to remake BioDome. So, and some casting too. So check it out and enjoy. I'll be back at the end to talk to you again.
So we're back here again on the Real 96 Podcast, episode 2. Covered Dunstan checks in last time. We're now still in January 12th, 1996. Right in the thick of it with BioDome, a movie that is very... it's an understatement to say that this movie is divisive. There is a camp of people that think this movie is a cult classic and a masterpiece, a comedic masterpiece, and there are people who think this is cancer. And there's really no in between with this movie. Pauley Shore is an anomaly of the 90s. If you didn't live during the 90s or you're too young to remember, I cannot stress enough how big Pauley Shore was in the 90s. With MTV and his feature films, he was one of the biggest pop culture stars of the 90s. As hard as that is to believe.
Early 90s, early half of the 90s.
Early mid-90s, he was everywhere, and you couldn't get away from him. With that said, I want to bring on my guests, Jeff Frumess and James Fox. Go ahead and just introduce yourselves real quick and what you do.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jeff Frumess. I'm a filmmaker, writer. I guess now I'm a podcaster too. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, and I love movies.
All right. I'm James Fox. I'm a filmmaker and writer and author. And I don't do a lot of podcasts, but I am definitely in the passionate for BioDome camp. So I'm very much looking forward to getting into it with this one.
Yes, I'm so happy to hear that, James.
It's good. We got a good range of opinions.
Yeah,
Pauley Shore is a national treasure.
Oh my God.
So this is I watched this last night, the first time I had ever seen it. I think it's the only Pauley Shore movie that I had never seen. And mostly because it was his last film and he was pretty much on the end of it. And I don't know what came before that. It was Jury Duty, and I pretty much had enough of Pauley Shore. So I never bothered watching this movie. And it was released in the doldrums of January when they dump. For people that don't know, the dumping season is usually January and August, especially back in the day for movie movie studios, they would just dump all what they thought were their shitty movies that wouldn't make any money in January because they're competing with all the awards movies from last year. So BioDome, Dunstan checks in, The Lawnmower Man 2, all these movies were prime dumping grounds for January. And I think I kind of avoided it because of that. And I watched it last night, and my wife, Mary, watched it with me. And we were just for most of I think I might have chuckled once. But for the most of the movie, I was just stone-faced and just silent watching it and going, I just don't get Pauly Shore. I couldn't understand what he was saying most of the time. I was wondering why Stephen Baldwin was in this movie. I was wondering why William Atherton, of all people, was in this movie. And Kylie Minogue is in this movie.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
Yes,
Rose McGowan, one of her first roles. Tenacious D is in this movie.
Yep.
It's just a random mishmash of people.
Joey Lauren
One
Adams.
of the funniest things, Joey Lauren Adams. One of the funniest things I read about this movie is that Alec Baldwin told Stephen Baldwin allegedly that do not do this movie because it's going to ruin your career. And
That's
I laughed out loud when I read that because I was like, he was right. So with that, I want to turn it over to you guys who have a more positive outlook on BioDome, and which I want to hear about. So tell us your experience with BioDome over the years.
James, why don't you go first, since you had you said you had a very positive experience.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I can talk about this all night. And not only was Tenacious D in it, but that was Tenacious D appearing on screen for the first time. I mean,
yes.
BioDome was a pivotal movie, a very successful pivotal movie of the 90s. And one of the things, so I was that crazy kid in film school that this always made my top 10 list. Everybody who goes to film school, you got to do what's your favorite films? What's your this? What's your that? Everybody's talking about the pretentious films that they love, which are great. But I was always like, number 2 was like BioDome. And I'd get to like number 4 before people would be like, wait, what? Right. And, here's my take on BioDome. It's controversial. It was incredibly successful. I would argue that it was one of the most successful films ever made based on what it was trying to do and what it was trying to be. Right. It was escapism at its best. It was hilarious. It was just a nonstop gag with Pauly Shore at like prime Pauly Shore. I feel like once he finished BioDome, he was like, I'm done. I can't do any better. This is it. It's not cerebral. It doesn't make you think. It has a great soundtrack. I mean, I actually own the soundtrack to this film. Like,
oh my God, I have questions.
Soundtrack to this film, right? This is what I'm talking about. I even braided my hair for a little while just because I liked the way Stephen Baldwin looked in this movie. So, I mean, I'm talking super fan here. And, when you're talking about successful movies, I mean, there's a lot of ways that you can describe a successful movie. Especially on the festival circuit, I get into these big debates with people about, was this a successful film? BioDome was a success because of what it was trying to be. And, it hasn't aged well in the humor. I think that if you didn't see it in the 90s and you watch it now, you won't get it, right? You kind of sit back and go, wait a second, what? I mean, I think that's maybe probably true of all Pauly Shore movies at this point. Like, they just, the humor hasn't aged well. But in the 90s, this was our everyday. I mean, I grew up in the Central Valley of California, and like, this was our life. Like, it was poking fun at what we did every day. Not that I did any of those things every day that they do in this film. I'm definitely not saying that. But yeah, so I mean, it didn't make a ton of money. I don't even think it made its budget back from what I remember looking at a long time ago. But an interesting cast. They obviously had fun on it. They actually, from what I remember, they used a take where the director's cracking up in the background, where Pauly Shore does the duckbill platypus thing with the nice rock thing. You can actually hear the director busting up in the background, but
oh my God,
Pauly Shore, I guess, was just like going nuts and improvising, and they loved it so much that they just went ahead and put it in, not caring that there's laughing in the background. So, I don't know if that's true or if that's just one of those weird hokey things. I've gone back and listened, and I definitely hear something back there, but I don't know. It's been mixed way down, so I don't know if it's true or not. But
I definitely noticed that for sure. When I was watching it, I noticed that a lot of the takes, it just felt like the director was like, "All right, go ahead and do your thing," and they just kind of riffed on and just you just wind Pauly Shore up and just let him go, and you can kind of see at the end of the take, it's not really clear, but it's almost like he's looking at the director to be like, was that good?
Yeah.
And they just kind of left it in, and it was just like I kind of like that loose aspect of it. I just can't get into Pauly Shore's shtick anymore. I should have seen this when it came out in the 90s. I might have thought it was funnier because I do think some of his other movies are funny, but this movie just did not hit me the right way last night at all. Like, I'm sorry to say.
It's all right. Nobody's perfect.
No, nobody's perfect. That's right. I'll take that one. So, Jeff.
Okay. So first of all, I'm so glad that you guys had that. Thank you for James for that fact, which I did not know about the director. And Nathan, your observation as well, because as I said, I have this list of notes, and one of them is what is the terminology on SNL when it's an endearing thing. It's not something that people get upset about, or Lorne Michaels gets upset about when you break character. What's it called? Don't they have a
is it like called corpsing?
No, there's a very specific term for it, and basically what it is, and it's true. It actually causes me to laugh for certain. If I see a character on SNL start to lose their composure while they're trying to keep in character and they break character, Jimmy Fallon was the worst. The worst when it came to this.
Well, it gets old with him because he does it in every sketch, and that's just come on, keep it together. But like when someone like Will Ferrell cracks up, that's funny because he never cracks up.
Will Ferrell was out. Will Ferrell was the most rewarding to watch that happen to. He was usually the one, and that's part of the game. The other part of the game is I'm going to do my role so well that I want to get you to crack up, and that's what Will Ferrell was all about. That Chris Farley famously, I'm sorry, this is a tangent, but I have to say this now because we're talking about it. Chris Farley, I don't know if you remember the Fresh Pepper sketch with Adam Sandler. Yeah, Chris Farley had one line, and he's just supposed to be the straight guy. And he went to Adam Sandler. He's like, "I'm going to make you laugh." And so he takes this one line, which in the mouth of anybody else would be nothing, and he just goes, "Why, thank you, Pepper Boy. That is the perfect amount of pepper." And made Adam Sandler just crack up. And that's this thing. It's like it's called when you break character. And to get back to BioDome, I saw so many shots, so many scenes of Pauly Shore just breaking character, like just not even like so big at this point, such a big star that like he doesn't even give a shit. Like he just does. He's like, "Yeah, we're doing a movie," like just like just completely not giving a shit about the movie, and like in the sense of like I'm not gonna do this take again. I did it. I'm the funniest person alive because everybody loves me, and I'm cracking up halfway through the take. I'm not even like staying in character. At least that's what I saw on this revisit. But BioDome, I really agree with what James said about BioDome is a film that must be seen in the 90s to have any kind of appreciation for it. It's definitely a film that remains endearing in the year 2021. It's so weird to say that, 2021. It remains endearing in the year 2021 because it is such a 1990s time capsule, which for many of us, for many Gen Xers and for many millennials, the 90s were a good time, a positive time, a wonderful time. And so watching a movie like BioDome sort of like brings those aesthetics, because it's so 90s. My first thing here is the credits are so 90s. We're at the height.
I was going to mention that. Oh my God. As soon as the credits hit, I was like, yeah, I'm in high school right now. Like, that was nuts. That took me back, way back.
But in a positive way, right?
Absolutely. I will say that. It was very nostalgic.
Right. So, I mean, like, and then, as you said, you guys already, I don't know how much more I can emphasize this. Encino Man made Pauly Shore a household name, and he did he did from 1990 to 1995, the first half of the 90s. Pauly Shore was like the Jim Carrey of the early 90s, like just everywhere, and he could do no wrong. And then just like the flare that burns bright for a moment, he just snuffed out so quickly. And this is the dying animal of his career, of a movie, just sort of like crawling off into the desert wilderness to die. That's not to say that I don't appreciate it. I very much do. And I would say probably the funniest bit that I had not forgotten about, but the thing that really still I thought really landed was the parrot saying, "I am God, I am God." And then he's like, "No, I am God." He eats the parrot. That was great.
That was so abrupt.
Yeah.
Like with the one scene, he's like talking to him. I'm like, oh, he's got a parrot, and then the next scene, he's eating him. I was like, Jesus, that escalated quickly.
Parrot. Like, what a great gag! And
I will say, I love William Atherton so much. He is so good in every movie he's in. So it was welcome. It was nice to see him in a movie, even if it was BioDome, where I was entertained by him when he was on screen. Just he's so good at just having disdain towards idiots. Like, and at the end of the movie where he's chasing them or they're chasing him, and they're trying to get the remote control away from him, and he's like Pauly Shore's like something like, I'm gonna get you, and we're gonna get, and he's like, will you just complete a full sentence? That's the line that made me laugh, just because he hates these idiots so much. That worked for me. I liked his performance.
I'd just like to interject real quickly, because I think it should set the precedent for some of the conversation. Upon rewatching this film, Faulkner, he plays the character Faulkner, and his first name is Noah, which I thought was very fitting considering they're in a biodome. So it's like Noah's Ark. It's biodome, I guess. So that's kind of like running theme. He's the good guy. He is not the bad guy. The Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin are absolutely, unequivocally the bad guys of this movie.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
This movie might have the greatest 180 for character arc I've ever seen in a movie. These guys are the most inconsiderate, destructive, slacker assholes I've ever seen in my life. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, let's clean everything up. And it was just like, it was abrupt. There was no scene where they're just like searching their souls or anything. It was just like, we're gonna invent these dumbass inventions and we'll help you clean this place up. And it's just like, where the fuck did that come from? Like, what?
But they do it in such an endearing way. You know what I mean? Like it is abrupt, but like there's that one scene, and I should, you guys have both watched it this week. I don't need to, because I've seen this film so many times. I have it memorized.
Wow.
There's the scene where I can't remember the name of the butterfly, but there's that butterfly, right? That the one scientist really likes, and they're like, hey, your butterflies are porking, right?
Yeah.
And like that's a pivot moment for that character. And as a writer, like you just sit back and appreciate, like, it's to anybody else it's a throwaway line. But the fact that he cares now about this butterfly and them doing it, and just the connection that he has with the other scientists and everything, is like, that's a very telling scene for that character transition, right? So again, I would argue, like on the surface, it looks like, a bunch of stoned Gen Xers got in a room and like, let's just turn Pauly Shore loose in a biodome and see what happens with the cameras on. But if you actually analyze the writing, it's actually like pretty interesting storytelling for an anti-hero film. We're rooting for these slacker loser assholes, and dare I say, caring about the environment because they're such assholes.
I will say that one of the positives about this movie, I thought, especially for a movie made in the mid 90s, no homophobia, and it was a very sex positive film as far as the main characters were like, I don't want to say like they were open to being bisexual, but there was definitely like an easiness to it that you don't see in a lot of other films, where, I don't know if you guys picked up on that, where it was just kind of like, they were just, normally those characters in those movies, there's an air of homophobia or any kind of transphobia. And there was none of that in this movie. And I thought that was actually nice to see.
Which literally, if you watch Ace Ventura today, the entire third act of Ace Ventura is about basically shaming someone who's transgender for being transgender, and the entire movie is predicated on a joke that making out with a woman who used to be a man is disgusting. Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, very crazy. But you look back and like there were so many of those jokes in those movies back then, and you just kind of cringe. Like even you watch Bill and Ted, the original Bill and Ted, and they're like, there's one scene where they're celebrating and they hug each other and then they back up and they say the F word to each other. And it's very jarring to watch nowadays. You're like, oh, that did not age well at all.
Yeah, and there's a lot of physicality between Bud and Doyle, right?
They love each other very much.
They're touching each other's faces. They're holding hands, like
chewing toenails.
Yes.
Yeah, that toenail scene broke me.
Oh man, the corn.
What?
Right?
Oh my god!
But that that reminds me so much of like not eating each other's corns off each other's feet. I never did that, I promise. But just that like comfort with your friends. Like BioDome kind of epitomizes that arc in that '90s Gen X generation. Where we were just cool and comfortable with everybody.
I want to circle back to, hold on. I'm trying to remember a couple of things. I wanted to circle back to a few things. Firstly, the thing about the porking butterflies. Here's my rebuttal. I don't disagree with what you're saying, but my rebuttal would be that, or at least the one thing that I have the problem with what you said is that Doyle doesn't actually do anything to make the butterflies pork. He literally, it's as you said, it's just that he cares now, because what he did was he literally killed all the bugs in the thing. And then with through no credit of Bud or Doyle, the butterflies somehow by some miracle find each other and start porking. And all he does is point it out, and the bug guy loves him for it. Like there's no, like it's as Nate said, it's such a 180. Like there's no changing moment. There's no moment of reflection. It's literally like, he just simply points it out, and that's supposed to be his character change. And then, what's interesting, the flip side too, is there's all these like flashback cutaway scenes to show us how good of friends they are based on what, following what you guys were saying about their relationship, which I really do. I really did enjoy those cutaway scenes, even as random. It's like the proto Family Guy 5-second, flashback kind of thing.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Questions. First of all, Patty Hearst plays the mom. Second of all, I think I wrote this down. Are Bud and Doyle half siblings or cousins? Because I think they have the same mother and different fathers. That's what I was picking up when I was watching that. James, I don't know, seeing that you've seen this movie way more than us, is there anything that you've seen that implies that?
No. So from what I remember of the film, I believe they're best friends who live together.
Okay.
So I think that I can't remember if it's Bud or Doyle that like parents ran away and like abandoned him or something.
Yeah, but remember when they're in the desert and they're talking about, they seem to be talking about a common relative when they're making confessions, and in probably the best moment for Stephen Baldwin, absolutely his best moment in the film, in terms of like acting ability, where he does this monologue that just flows out of his mouth like diarrhea, but like it's so good. About the flaming gerbil or whatever that it's basically a parody, in the same way that they parodied the Zapruder film, the JFK assassination film with the clown. They also parodied what happened, the Great Chicago Fire, which was started by a cow named Bessie in a barn. It was basically the same thing, and it was a great moment for Stephen Baldwin.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think they're just best friends who live together. But
that's what I had thought. Like, in the opening scene, I just thought that they were two friends. They're over at one of their house. I didn't know that they lived together. And then I was like, the flashback with the mom when she's pushing him under the water. I'm like, are they brothers? Are they cousins? Like, what are they? So I just kind of felt like they were either really, really close friends, or they were like They were just like cousins.
Nate, I also want to touch back
So-
on one thing that you said about you said it was refreshing that there was no homophobia in the movie. I think I'm trying to remember there. Yes, first of all, you're right. There is no homophobia, but there, in terms of like what, and that's what we do. You know, that's the main thing when you revisit something from a long time ago. You're like, would it fly today? And there was so much like sexual harassment that would definitely not work for laughs in the way that.
Sure. Yeah. They harassed
Like
the female
crazy.
scientists quite a bit. And that would be the one thing I'd be like, okay. But, and then, you know, later on, typical, you know, Hollywood writing, they try to sleep with Bud and Doyle. And it's just like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Like what? Like these two successful scientists who are extremely intelligent are all of a sudden want to sleep with these two idiots. Like, I don't know. That was another kind of out of left field thing. I know that they begrudgingly, the story was they begrudgingly came to accept these two idiots as, you know, good people. But like to go from that to wanting to sleep with them, like, come on. But it was good on them for not sleeping with them because they had girlfriends.
And then the other
So
thing
good for
too
them.
is, and again, I love Joey Lauren Adams, like definitely one of like one of my forever loves from the 90s, along with Nev Campbell as Sidney Prescott from Scream. But they like, in terms of, I mean, totally like making sure those nips are being seen through the shirt. You know what I'm saying? Like just know, like that was as soon as I saw her, and I mean, she looks amazing. She looks incredible in it. But you could tell that they probably had someone on set, you know, because they're supposed to be in Arizona. Right. And then like, you know, every other scene, it's like she's in a cold room and like just the sexualization, that aspect of it. So on some levels it worked with the, you know, in terms of like, there seems to be very, you know, forward thinking about, you know, brotherly love or whatever you want to call it, and not be homophobic. But then in other areas it does, there is quite a bit of sexualization and harassment and yada, yada, yada.
There is, yeah. It's I do want to mention my favorite character in this movie is Russell. Taylor.
Wait, which one's Russell?
Russell, and he plays
yes,
Joey Lauren Adams'
Pizza Man.
mother.
Yeah.
She has like a live-in boyfriend. Yeah, he's like I can't go to the bathroom. I damaged my bladder. That was actually one of the other. I damaged it rollerblading. Right. That was a fucking funny line. I will give it that. He's so good in every movie he's in. He's one guy that does not get enough. He's in a shitload of movies, especially. I know, it's terrible. But I wrote
in this.
So good,
I wrote a note that he literally, and I guess it kind of changes a little bit later in the film, but he literally existed for the first few scenes just to pass along information about what was happening with Bud and Doyle to Joey Lauren Adams' character. Like that was his only device in the movie to always like deliver this information.
And pizza.
Literally deliver information when he delivers the pizza. I'm like, that's real fucking convenient. Like, how does they're like, what? How do we do this scene?
Right.
Be like, well, we haven't used him in a while. Let's just have him be a pizza delivery guy. So no, but yeah, he was great. I loved him.
Yeah, I think going back to the sexualization stuff, it's been a long time since the 90s now, but I remember that this film for me, watching it back then, I think I saw this in the movie theater. I'm not going to lie. I think I actually went to the movie theater and saw this in its limited release form. It released in 1,000 theaters.
I saw Double Dragon in the movie theater.
That's a late 90s movie too. Just saying that.
I think back then, like compared to other films, though, there actually was a lot less sexualization. Like I think people actually didn't. I seem to recall friends not liking it because it was very boring or dull.
Well, there's
whatever.
no nudity in it.
No nudity. It was fairly tame. For that kind of time period.
You're right.
So, looking on it with hindsight, yeah, okay, it's all there, right? But in the moment, I actually from being back then, I remember being like, wow, this is this movie's not that bad. It's pretty clean for a movie about people using drugs and trespassing and killing the environment and partying. It's a very weird film in that you want to hate it, but it kind of grows on you. The more you think about it, the more you're like, maybe they were actually like thinking while they made this movie. You want to just think that it's just trash thrown onto the screen, and as stuff starts coming up, you're like, maybe not. I don't know.
I don't think that. I think 99% of movies are thought out. Absolutely. Like even stuff like, stuff that I mean, like, look, I like a lot of really stupid movies. I like Kung Pao, Enter the Fist. I like Basketball. I mean, it's not that I only like highbrow movies. I like a lot of really stupid movies. It's just this one just did not hit me in the right spot. And I know, everybody's got different tastes, and that's cool. And I am genuinely excited when somebody is excited about a movie, even if I didn't like it, because I like hearing their take on it, because it might actually make me think, oh, maybe I should go back and watch this movie, or you know what, that part was actually pretty funny. So it's good to hear other people's opinions, because you get so caught up in social media and you want everybody to agree with you on everything. And I see so many people get bent out of shape on social media when someone doesn't like the same movies they do, or they're like, oh, what about this movie? And it's so simple, and there's like no need to argue over stuff. I'd rather hear about other people's opinions on movies that they may have liked that I didn't like.
I'm trying to remember there was a movie that I really liked that you disagreed with me, Nate, and I'm trying to remember what it was. We were talking about it on my wall. It was a while ago, and it's killing me. Maybe it was Planet of the Apes related. It's going to bother me forever. But when you were saying that just now, I was just thinking that. I was trying to remember what the movie was, because I thought you were crazy not to like it. But back to BioDome. So here's some observations that I noticed, some random smattering of observations. Oh, and by the way, Jake, I will agree with you. Everything you said about, it being rather tame compared to other 90s movies. I think it's also really important to say, and with everything that I just said just now about the sexualization, it's not that I'm complaining about it at all. I always like to view movies in the context of when they were made. I never will hold a movie against it, the sensibilities of its time, meaning like, which is something that I really applaud Disney Plus for, where I know they've done some edits to their films, but like, for instance, they leave the Siamese cat scene in Lady and the Tramp, which I know is considered to be rather offensive. And they put a disclaimer at the beginning saying, talking about why we're not cutting it out, but this is a product of this time where people thought really backwards in this kind of way, yada, yada, yada. And I think that in that kind of way, movies need to always be viewed in the context of when they were created. Because, BioDome is a time capsule of the 90s. That's literally why I think that's why people still like it so much. Why, if it has a cult following in the same way that Encino Man, which I think people genuinely love, besides the fact that it's a 90s movie, but, Encino Man is also a time capsule of the 90s, early 90s rather. And that these movies need to always be viewed in the context of when they were created.
I agree. And if anybody wants to join the official BioDome fan club, I am the president of that cult. That hit me up in my DMs and we'll get you onboarded. I think I'm right there with you. And I love arguing films. I mean, obviously I went to film school and BioDome was on my top 10 list. I mean, you should have seen people's faces. I had an instructor basically say, "You're going to die on this hill today," and I was like, "Bring it, let's go. I'll die right here, right now." And it's some, I was being a little bit facetious and poking fun at it, trying to be a little bit different or anything. But I really do like the film, and I think that arguing about what makes a film good helps make films better. So I think that. Really, it boils down to kind of your experience, right? Like your guys' childhood's probably different than mine. I can really relate to these characters. One of the things that I really like looking back, watching this film now, or I think the last time I watched it was a few years back on an airplane. It was on one of the airplane preloaded things, and I was so happy. I think I watched it twice.
Oh my God, you really like this movie.
I really like this film. I'm not gonna lie. And in fact, my dentist gets mad at me because anytime they've put the mask over me, I do the "I'm a duckbill platypus" thing, right? And they're always like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "It's BioDome, guys. Come on now." And no one's seen this film. Like, no one has seen this film. So, I find it a very quotable film, and nobody else has ever seen it. So I'm just quoting stuff for my own amusement. But now I'm thinking about my dentist, and I've totally lost track of my train of thought. But I think. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to interject. If you're talking about lines of dialogue, speaking also to my comment about Pauley Shore literally just being like, I'm Pauley Shore, the biggest thing on earth, and I'm just gonna, whatever I do is gonna be funny on tape, because that's literally how I felt. He said, I had to quote this line. Actually, maybe this was Stephen Baldwin who said this. It was, "Welcome to the place where I am going to drain my lizard," and then flicks his tongue. Was that Pauley Shore or was that Stephen Baldwin?
I'm pretty sure that was Stephen Baldwin.
He goes, "Welcome to the place where I'm going to drain my lizard." And he's saying that to who exactly? He's not saying it to Pauley Shore. He's not saying it to himself. It's like he's just exclaiming to the air, to just the environment, "Welcome to the place where I'm going to drain my lizard." And it's just like,
there's a lot of tongue action in that film.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's when he's peeing in the waterfall, I'm pretty sure.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Just like that's what he's about. Like that's what these characters, and I said this too. I wrote two things. One, I noticed that there was carrot fellatio, and I was blown away because I have carrot fellatio in my film, and I thought I was the only one who ever did carrot fellatio, and I was totally wrong. Kylie Minogue beat me to it. And number two, I wrote, I want to see Blumhouse remake this as a horror film. How would that go down?
Speaking of Kylie Minogue, another tidbit I thought was hilarious is that she considers this to be her worst career move ever. And that covers a lot of ground.
Yes.
And she said her father still makes fun of her for doing this.
I believe it.
Like, can you imagine? Be like coming over for family dinner, be like, "Oh yeah, how are those BioDome royalties treating?"
Well, they talked about doing a sequel, actually.
God!
I remember this. I got very excited.
He's still talking about it. I think he still wants to do the sequel. Stephen Baldwin.
I have on my list two things that I have on my list. One, where are Bud and Doyle today? I actually asked that question when I was watching this. And two, the very end of the movie, two things happen. One, Faulkner escapes, and you hear a voice, a disembodied voice saying, "Where did he get that key?" Which means that he was just crawling through poop, like at some point to get the key, right? And number two, they head into a nuclear power plant that is about to melt down, which implies one of two things. One, that the movie ends with a nuclear holocaust, or two, which would be very symbolic of like the environmental themes of the movie, or two, what they're saying is that by having to go pee in a nuclear facility that's having a meltdown, Bud and Doyle are somehow going to save this power plant from melting down, just simply because they entered the place where they're going to have to pee.
Jeff, I don't know if you were meaning to or not, but you totally just channeled Trailer Voice Man. During that pitch, you gave me chills. Wow. I am ready to see the Bud and Doyle sequel to BioDome, where they save the planet from nuclear annihilation.
Yeah.
By having to go pee.
Yeah.
That was excellent.
Because if you think about it, so let's pull this thread a little bit further. If you think about it, like the way that would end eventually is the whole movie, the whole running gag is that Bud keeps telling Doyle to cork it, which is what he is a running gag in the first BioDome. For some weird reason, that is like a thing that they've repeated. Can you cork it? Like it's like he's asking him to hold in his pee. Like it's some sort of like funny thing, which is just simply like, hey, can you just not go to the bathroom right here? That there would be some sort of running, that would be a running theme in the sequel to BioDome. And everything's solved. You know how like with nuclear stuff, you have to cool the rods. And so Doyle cools the rod by peeing on it. And that saves everything.
Yes. I'm on board. I'm so on board for this. You guys, you can't post this. This is going to get stolen. I'm going to reach out to Pauley Shore tomorrow and be like, I've got the guy to write the sequel.
No, that's all you. You're such a fan. I want you to do it. I'm giving you full. That is for you. And by the way, two other observations. One, Phil Lamar is in it. He has a tiny bit role, and this would be right around the time of first season of Mad TV. So you got Phil Lamar. The guy. He's also in Pulp Fiction. He gets his head blown off by John Travolta. He's in it. And also the idea that they must have been doing the safety dance for months, because many months pass and they're still doing the dance halfway through the montage, which means that the safety dance must have been playing for months outside, as the guy who said he deals with hostage and siege situations has the perfect solution for that. So they probably had looped that a lot of times. So
it's a great song.
Yeah, I like it. And at one point, there was even a little person, like from the music video, in there doing leading them around as they do the safety dance.
So one of the things that struck me about this movie, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way, is this weird news story about Buttercup the clown and getting assassinated at the local strip mall or whatever, and they replay the footage of the clown being killed like the Zapruder film, and it's like back and to the left, like JFK.
It was hilarious.
What the fuck was that? Like seriously, it was hilarious, but it's just like, who came up with that? Was that the screenwriter? Was that the director? Was that Pauly Shore? It just makes you wonder, like, they have the cutaways from when they were, younger, when they're grooming the dog and they've got peanut butter on their face, and then they've got the whole Buttercup thing. It's almost kind of like, it's like they're riffing in the regular story and takes, and then they've got these sketch comedy bits that they want to put in here too. It's just, it was kind of a weird, bizarre
format. I personally like to argue that there's actually quite a lot of symbolism in this film. I usually kind of becomes a little bit of a hot take, because people are like, symbolism in BioDome? Are you out of your damn mind? But I don't even think that I've uncovered all of the layers of symbolism that are in here. And I think some of them are funny, and I think some of them are serious, right? Like we talked about the, Doyle draining his lizard into the waterfall, right? And it's this whole like piss on nature thing. It basically like summarizes their entire philosophy on nature. Like they don't care. It's just, he needs to go pee, and it's, this is what he's doing. It's this beautiful BioDome experiment thing, right? And they're just totally peeing in the river. So, I think that the, when you actually start kind of peeling back just the like comedy, I think that, and kind of mid 90s, as I recall, like that was the kind of the rise of some of the like, climate change stuff, where people were really starting to kind of push the idea that, hey, we're screwing up, and I actually like wound up like researching like biodomes, and like there was actually kind of like a real thing going on, right? Like there was I don't know that they did a real biodome experiment, but there was talks about it. So and everybody's talking about these like the climate change and whatever. So it was like real topics, and like sure, they were being very cheeky about it, but it was enough that like, a young impressionable me as a junior in high school, was like, I'm driving a 1967 Mustang. I'm polluting the heck out of the planet. I'm Doyle pissing in the waterfall. So, it's in a weird way, if you can actually like kind of like get past the just like raw jokes and the Pauly Shore and the weird like incoherent almost dialogue at points. There's actually some pretty good messaging layered into the film, and for me that's important, like having a film that actually like has a good message to it, at least for the time that it was made in. I think is pretty important.
There were a lot of birthday parties going on in that movie. It was like, I do remember that back then that was a big thing though. That was, it's accurate. If you want a good time, if you're like a younger person and you've never seen BioDome, you want to get a good time capsule of the mid 90s. I mean, good or bad, watch this movie and you'll get a pretty good idea of it, because everything in this movie is authentic to the 90s.
Like it's nice to, I got to tell you, I don't know what it is, But it's just like, and that's a thing that maybe we need to qualify here. Why is that? Do people who grew up in the 80s feel the same way about the 80s as people who grew up in the 90s feel about the 90s in that kind of way? I was 5 years old by the end of the 80s. So I was born in 85. So I can't really speak to the second half of the 80s in any which way, because I don't remember it. But I remember I have such warm, fond memories of pop culture in the 90s. It was just a wonderful decade full of amazing things. And yeah, I don't know.
I have a different kind of nostalgia for the 80s than I do for the 90s. And, I was born in 79. So I don't remember all of the 80s, but the 80s that I do remember, probably from like 83 on, I have a very fond nostalgia for. And it's a different kind of nostalgia than the 90s, because I remember all of the 90s, but at the same time, it's different. I was a teenager, in the mid 90s. You're a different person. You have different feelings. You go on through high school and all that friggin' drama, and it's just a different time period. So when I hear a song from from the soundtrack or from Empire Records or something like that, it really does brings me to an exact point. I know exactly where I was when I first heard that song, or when I first went out on a date with that girl, or when I first was able to drive a car. I remember it's a different kind of nostalgia. It's more of a rose glass colored nostalgia for the 80s than it is more for an accurate kind of pinpoint. This is a story of my life kind of thing for the 90s. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm right there with you. I was born in 79 too. And it's like, I can't watch E.T. without almost crying, because that's how the 80s feel to me, right? Like the weird bicycle gang. Like, I don't know what, it's like nobody ever talked about, hey, let's all get on our bikes and like ride around together. You just like take off on your bike, and the next thing you know, there's 50 people behind you on bicycles. And if you're at the front of the Flying V, you're like, well, shit, now I got to figure out where we're going. Like, I was just riding my bike. Now I'm responsible for all these people, and
well, it's like with the Goonies, that movie spoke to me because I saw that at the perfect age, and I wanted to get on my bike with my friends and go search for pirate treasure and get into adventures like that. That shit is catnip for kids like that are like 7, 8, 9, whatever. It hit me at the perfect time. So yeah, I get it. E.T., the Goonies, it's just it's a very ethereal, magical
right. Like
feeling
with the 90s,
when I think about those.
I almost feel like I was like grown up in the 90s, right? Like it's not like childhood wistful memories like the 80s, where it's like it's kind of through this like fog of nostalgia. Like the 90s are like straight up memories. Like I can look back and say, I watched this on this day and this happened, and it made me feel this way. And that's, I'm sure BioDome is I like it 75% because of the nostalgia that it gives me, right? But doesn't that make that I'd argue that makes that a successful film if it is invoking emotion in you. Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing as filmmakers?
Yeah, can't argue with that.
I'm going to go ahead and just put this.
I can't argue with that.
I mean, I literally feel.
I'm still not a huge fan of the movie.
I feel almost like I'm losing IQ. Like I'm losing brain cells every time I watch Pauly Shore and Stephen Baldwin, like just chewing scenery like they are the funniest like men on the planet, and it's like stupefying to watch in a way. And yet at the same time, it is kind of fun. There is a little element of fun. The other thing I keep looking at, I'm like going like, again, for me, I grew up on Kevin Smith, that was my, Mallrats and Clerks. And in the 90s, I grew up on Kevin Smith. And so, Jay and Silent, my dim-witted duo is Jay and Silent Bob. And so, seeing these guys, like, this is almost like, I guess Jay and Silent Bob existed already, but they weren't Jay and Silent Bob really come to prominence in Mallrats, not so much in Clerks. And so Mallrats would have been out for a year, but Mallrats was a bomb and wouldn't develop the cult following for another few years on VHS. So therefore, there would be no desire, I think, at this time when they're making this movie, when Pauly Shore is the biggest thing on the planet, or in the sunset of his career, to want to try and outdo or cash in on the Jay and Silent Bob with these two guys. So that I rule that out. But they very much are supposed to be a Cheech and Chong, Jay and Silent Bob, Laurel and Hardy, like that whole Dean and Martin, just like they're trying to do the comedic duo thing, and it just doesn't really. I don't know. It doesn't really. I will say this though. I do agree. It is endearing to see their love for one another in the film. That's very much there. And I guess that is the element that probably works best. I'm sitting there watching them chew each other's toenails. And I did write, what did I write down? I wrote down chewing toenails to let us know how close these guys are. So
can you imagine taking that risk as a filmmaker? Like sitting down and being like, all right, guys, look, here's the deal. We really need to establish some backstory. Okay. So you guys are very close. I want you to sit on the couch and, Pauley, I want you to put your foot in Steven's face. And Steven, I want you to go ahead and eat that corn off of his toe.
It was probably his idea. It was probably Pauley. You really think that the director, the writer and director were called? I mean, Pauly Shore probably got every single bit of financing for this film. And when you have a movie star that's like the vehicle of the driving force of a thing, it doesn't matter who the director is. It's like any Adam Sandler film. You think what kind of pull does any director have on an Adam Sandler film? Adam Sandler is the one who calls on the shots.
Oh yeah. So, well, who directed BioDome? This is Jason Blum, I think, right? Like
Overnight Delivery.
Yeah, he's done. He really didn't direct. I don't think he directed much after that. Yeah. He's done some producing lately, some producing in like The Hitman's Bodyguard and a couple other things. But I don't remember him directing anything immediately after that. There's a lot of TV. Oh, yeah. Just a lot of TV stuff.
I think you're right. I mean, the script probably looked something like two guys get locked in a biodome, go. Right. And Pauly Shore just was like, give me some props to work with and let's make this happen.
Another interesting thing, it was originally supposed to be a vehicle for
Dana Gould
and Harlan Williams. And that was going to be their launching pad to stardom. And I was reading a story about it, and they were like, they had the script memorized forwards and backwards, and the director was going to go to bat for them and be like, I've got these two unknown comedians that are on the rise, and it's going to be their entree into Hollywood. And I guess one of the producers was like, no, we got Pauly Shore. And
what a shame.
Wow. And the director caved immediately. He's okay, that's fine. And that was that. So I would have liked to have seen, Harlan Williams and Dana Gould.
Yeah, that would have been. Let's play that game for a minute, if we could, Nate. Who else could have worked in? I mean, I guess you really couldn't cast these guys with anybody else truly and have it still be BioDome. But is there another pairing besides Dana and Harlan, and besides Steven and Pauly Shore? Who could fit into these roles? Like, what would happen if it was Adam Sandler?
Yeah.
Wow, Adam Sandler and Dave Chappelle.
I was going to say Adam Sandler and Dave
Chris Farley and David Spade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it wouldn't
Chris
be the
Farley
same.
And David Spade.
They would not have the same like college
slacker
slacker stoner approach. It would be. Like, I couldn't see Spade. Well, maybe I guess I could see Spade in that role, but I would imagine it would be more along the lines of Tommy Boy or Black Sheep, with one of them playing the straighter character and the other one playing the joke guy.
I would be fine with 90 minutes of Chris Farley just destroying the environment, and David Spade is just
okay. So let's flip this a little bit.
I don't know. Why don't you touch it?
Who would we get to star in it?
Okay. Chris Pratt.
Oh boy.
Yes.
Chris Pratt would play one of them, and
Chris Pratt as Doyle, obviously.
Chris Pratt as Doyle, and then as the other guy who's funny. That is
Michael
bizarre.
Shannon.
Michael Shannon would play Faulkner. Michael Shannon is Faulkner. Chris Pratt,
there you go.
Doyle,
that would be hilarious.
Who plays Bud? Who plays Pauly Shore? Come on, got to think of somebody that would. It's got to be the same age as Chris Pratt. It's got to be
Pete Holmes or someone like that,
kind
or
of. We want that same buddy feel, you know. Jack Black. No, that's too much. Yeah, Ryan Reynolds.
Oh my God.
Ryan Reynolds and Chris Pratt would crush that. They would crush that. They would do a good job.
Oh my God.
And you have Michael Shannon as Faulkner, or how about if we want to get really crazy with it, how about Giancarlo, what's his last name? He plays Grand Moff
Esposito.
Yeah, there you go. Esposito. Yeah, as Faulkner. That would be great. Oh, no. How about Will Ferrell? How about Danny McBride? I don't know. Did you guys ever see Vice Principals?
Yes.
I got to tell you, I didn't watch Eastbound and Down. I did watch The Fabulous Gemstones. But I got to tell you, Vice Principals is such a great show. And the relationship, rivalry, dynamics between Walter and Danny is just, they are phenomenal. And I would love to see them reprise their roles in something. So why not BioDome?
Okay, I'm down with that, but in that scenario, I want Nick Offerman as Faulkner.
Yeah, I'm down for it.
Okay.
With the beard. Nick Offerman with the beard.
Good choice.
What about he hasn't been in anything recently? What about Zach Galifianakis as either Bud or Doyle?
I'm not the world's biggest Zach Galifianakis fan, to be honest with you.
That's okay.
I can't hide my feelings. Maybe Between Two Ferns, Zach Galifianakis.
What about
very funny, but Hollywood movies, Zach Galifianakis?
Jason Miller? No, not Jason Miller. Who's the guy? No, who's the guy? Jason Sudeikis? Oh my God, yes, Charlie fucking Day.
I would go for, how about Charlie
as
Day?
Bud?
Let's go with Charlie Day.
And Chris Pratt as Doyle.
Charlie Day.
Forget about Ryan Reynolds. He's too pretty boy. He's too much of a pretty boy.
There you go.
Chris Pratt and Charlie Day is criminally underused in. I love when he pops up. I'm so stoked in anything. It's phenomenal.
God, I feel like we should pitch this, guys. This is the reboot.
He's good in anything he does.
Right here.
So I think we cracked it.
Absolutely in space. No,
do we keep it in the desert? Do we go into space? Do we go on
Mars?
In the water?
No, it would be on Mars, and they would run into aliens.
A joyride in Elon Musk's Tesla that has crash landed on Mars.
I like it, like Mission to Mars.
So what would happen is. What happens is they are two janitors that stow away on the rocket to Mars. They wind up, they're equipped for 7 when they only have enough resources for 5. That happens too. They go on a spacewalk. They put on the suits and go on a spacewalk because what happens is there's something really important on the ship that gets sucked out through a toilet and winds up on the red soil. Some sort of calculations that the Faulkner character has in his thing, and they don't want to get into any trouble, so they put on the spacesuits, and of course they put them on the wrong way, or they put them on in a way where they're like the butt pipe is connected to one's helmet, so that when one farts, the other one gets the fumes of the other guy's whatever. And along the way, as they're looking for the note, they find a Martian who they befriend and bring back to the dome, who they're hanging out with. And the Martian becomes the third wheel, who they're the puppy, who they're always on the sitcom, when you get the puppy and you got to hide the puppy from the family. So they're always hiding the alien. But meanwhile, the alien the Martian belongs to a tribe or a unit or something, and they need to get him back. So they're on their way to the biosphere, the BioDome, to attack. Like John Carpenter from Mars, like Ghosts of Mars, like the tribe, they're very tribal. So they're on their way to attack, and they don't know what to do, and they don't realize that the problem is in the fact that they're hiding the Martian who can put an end to all this in the first place.
What if the aliens
they get high off the alien farts for sure.
A THC level of being stoned.
So yes.
So they
my God,
construct
yes.
a makeshift
love
bong
it.
into the alien's ass, and they just get
Dude,
completely
you just
stoned.
nailed it.
And
You just nailed it.
they take advantage
Right.
of the poor alien, but then they realize that they're actually friends, and they don't
Fruit-
want to just use
They
him
call it
for
fruit
his
of the
ass
butt pipe,
stoning.
So
I think that works. That's very touching.
which is a real thing, by the way.
Fruit of the- That's another thing I wanted to bring up about the movie is when they break into the storeroom and they open up that container that has nuclear waste on it, and then they open it up and it's just a bunch
I
of
have
junk
one thing
food.
to say about that as well. That's
Why
one
would
of my
they even
notes.
have that?
I
Does
have
anyone-
I can't
can
answer
anyone
your question,
explain
but
that
I
to
also
me?
want to notate that when I freeze framed the picture, you can see that there is clearly 2 bags of vegetables. Carrots, celery, and radishes are in each one of these bags. And it's just like, why is that junk food?
Yeah, what? None of them ever, none of them would ever eat that. Like, as far as their characters have been informed, like nobody has a stash. There's no sub story where one of them has a stash of junk
Spam.
food or anything. It's just like
And
they
spam.
just find this thing of Cheetos and Doritos and Country Time lemonade, and it's just like
And they're
convenient, isn't it?
They're
like
so
they should have figured out a
wasteful.
way to
It's like, dude,
turn
this is your one
turn the plants
stash
to
of
junk
junk
food
food
or something.
And they
or-
just like they're such hedonists. They're so in the moment about every dumb, stupid thing that they do. They're like, ooh, snacks, let's rip open these bags. It's
Right.
like, Jesus fucking Christ, bro.
yeah. So
I was like, what are you doing, man? They're on the floor now.
Right.
So, and another thing I noticed is when they're in the beginning of the movie, they're driving after they go to after the girlfriends trick them and they leave the cesspool. They're driving back and they drive past the
Wait,
BioDome,
at the end?
and the wide shot looks like a matte painting. Am I the only one who saw that after their girlfriends tricked them into going out to the place that's not a lake? It's just a bunch of junk, and they leave and they're going back.
Uh-huh.
And it's a wide shot of them driving down the highway, and the BioDome is in the background on the hill. Looks like a matte painting, and it's a really good matte painting. So I wanted to see if anyone else noticed that. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I was just not paying attention, but that's what it looked like to me. So if anyone wants to go back and check that out and let me know.
The nuclear
it's just a wide shot of them
is
driving down
absolutely
the highway.
a matte painting.
Oh, absolutely.
Which, by the way, I love matte paintings. Just saying that.
I can check that for you and see if that's a matte painting. I can.
Oh, and another thing I did like was the very first shot of the archive footage of William Atherton, Faulkner. He climbs the hill and he's like, "Oh, all this land, it's mine." It's just
dude,
like,
but
what?
He's not a douchey guy. He's not a douchey guy.
Oh,
he's
it's
so
a great way to introduce kind of a
them.
douchey character.
He's like, you know what's funny?
So wait,
actually?
he delivered the line.
He's such a tragic character, man. He's got serious pathos. He's been building this whole thing for he's been working his way up to this moment in his career. He's about to do this experiment. These 2 jack-offs totally fuck everything up. They throw this party. They ruin the BioDome. And the last thing you see is you just see him kind of crying, and he snaps. And then he makes coconut bombs. He's not a bad guy.
I will agree that he did not deserve
let them die
all the stuff that they heaped upon him, but he wasn't. He's not like he's a nice guy.
I think
he's not.
Dude, he tried so hard to be so nice to them at the beginning. He was so accommodating.
I think it was more because he thought he knew they were idiots right off the bat. They're like, okay, let's keep these dumbasses here so we can use them as guinea pigs for our experiment. He wasn't like.
I think it was a media ploy, right? I mean, there's that whole. He's the president of his own thing. The investor or whatever, right? The business manager of the BioDome, and there's this whole idea of the fakeness of the media, and they're keeping them involved as a media ploy because now all of a sudden they're relevant in just mainstream media. Maybe they were kind of highbrow science journals or whatever, but now they're on the news and suddenly they're relevant, right? And I think that speaks a lot to what was going on in the mid 90s. It's you started, that was the big rise of sensationalism, where people were doing stupid stuff and getting worldwide notoriety for it. And I think that theme is kind of prevalent throughout the film. And I think that the big wasteful scene in the secret stash closet is one of those. Right, it's this whole idea that obviously that wasn't Bud Doyle's secret stash, that was Faulkner's secret stash. He's the only one who would have known it was there.
Oh,
and
shit!
It's got like nuclear symbols on it so that no self-respecting scientist is going to open that canister. But Bud and Doyle probably don't know what a nuclear symbol is.
Dude,
so they rip it
you're
open and like, oh shit,
Dude,
I smell Cheetos, right? So it's this whole idea of they've got this like pristine experiment that is, they're going to survive or die in this microbiome, except that Faulkner's totally stashed a bunch of Cheetos and Spam for himself and everyone in the BioDome, right? So it's like it's this whole idea of sensationalism and Faulkner being a little bit fake, dare I say, even.
I think you just solved the mystery, though. We couldn't figure out why the junk food is in there. That's absolutely 150% why.
James is
I became a filmmaker for other reasons, but if I didn't have those reasons, it would be to champion BioDome. Pauly Shore, call me. We're going to work on the sequel. Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of blown away that you were able to answer that question.
I'm in awe.
And you want to know something? It's that kind of detective work that I really admire about, like, just sort of like that. That's my favorite type of challenge in a film. Like where there's something there and there's something that's clearly left unsaid, but definitely has deliberate purpose. And like, I feel like there's so many films like that. Probably my favorite mystery like that, I guess, maybe. I don't know if it's really counts because this is literally a question of where the hell did this come from? But just like a movie where like there's an element or a character or something that makes me have to try and write my own story to fill in the background, really just like sort of challenges my imagination. Like a great example would be, and I know this is a very common theory, but like a great example really is Reservoir Dogs, in the sense of it all started with asking a question. And the question I asked myself was, why does Mr. White kill Mr. Blonde? Wait, does he kill Mr. Blonde? Or why does Mr. White put a gun up to his boss's head and to Sean Penn's head at the end? Why is he so willing to like put his life on the line for Mr. Orange? Like, why would he do that? And the only reason that I could surmise is that they're in love. He loves Mr. Orange. They are in a relationship. It started at some point when they were doing this whole thing. And then if you go back and you look at the whole movie, the scene with the wedding ring, the fact, the symbolism of driving your pregnant wife to the hospital and holding their hand while they're in pain, like all these different elements, and it's all there. And it's like the same thing in BioDome. Like you just basically like blew this character wide open by simply filling in why that junk food canister would be in there. Dude, oh yeah, they're gay. Dude, they're so gay for each other in the best way ever. But they are 100% unequivocally in love. And that's why, I mean, think about it. Spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it, but at the very end, why to ask yourself these two questions. Why does Mr. White put a gun to his boss's head after everything? Like they're rescued. They're essentially rescued, but yet he's putting a gun to his boss's head, and they're in this standoff as a result that results in everybody dying. And here's the bigger question: why does Mr. Orange? He's rescued. The cops come through the door just as Mr. White's like holding him. Why does Mr. Orange choose death by telling Mr. White the truth that he is in fact a cop? Why? Because he loves him and he needs to tell him the truth. And they and so 100%, 150%, they loved each other and they both killed for each other's love.
I like it.
Dude, go back and watch Reservoir Dogs through that prism of their love.
I'll buy it.
It will blow your mind. It blew my jaw dropped open. And then all of a sudden I'm like, because there's this whole scene with the wedding ring. And I'm going, why is he debating whether to wear this ring or not? And I'm telling you, this is all has to do with how he wants Harvey Keitel to like view him and stuff. It just sort of, even down to the symbolism of going to get a fish taco, as if just in the way that they're sort of pretending to be things that they're not, that they need to go through this act of getting a fish taco, which is an euphemism, whatever, symbolism for what. I just think it all it's all there. And, Quentin Tarantino is smart enough to write something like that,
Right.
on subversively. It's there subversively. And it's just in the same way that Faulkner's a fake is subversive in BioDome with the.
Well, that makes sense because Reservoir Dogs is a riff on a lot of like Hong Kong action crime films, Asian cinema where male relationships are much more intimate than in the West.
I just want to reinstate
I buy that. 100%.
That I did not think of this.
That's amazing.
I came to this conclusion on my own by asking myself that question at the end of the last time I watched Reservoir Dogs. I then Googled it, and there's a lot of people that have thought this like myself, but it is like a thing. So
I just Googled it, and one of the things
literally,
popped up is this
the film
essay
opens up with him holding his
what we're
hand
just talking
and
about.
he's
And it
driving in
makes
the
sense
back
to me.
seat. It's almost like he's a husband driving his wife to the hospital. It just it's you can feel it in the characters.
Yeah,
really.
Oh, I didn't know this. Quentin Tarantino wanted James Woods to play Mr. Orange originally. Didn't know that. Whew. Well, that tangent was a lot of fun. You never know where it's going to take you. I think in our last episode we were talking about Congo, which was more related to Dunstan Checks In. But I love tangents. They're so much fun. I could talk movies all night. But we're going to wrap it up here. A little tidbit I wanted to throw out before we finish off BioDome. It is an award-winning film, but not for the reasons you might think. It won the Razzie for Worst Actor for Pauley Shore. And also worst hairdo for Stephen Baldwin for the Stinker Awards. So hey, you can turn losing into winning. I mean, they did win, so they won something. So I think that's. I like actors who go and accept their Razzie awards because it shows that they're sticking it to the Razzies, and they also don't give a shit. I like that. I like it when they do that. I think the actors take it personally. It's just like, come on, man, like lighten up. Yeah. So box office. This was released in the doldrums of January. It made about $5 million its opening weekend, a total gross of $13.4 million at the domestic box office. Was not released internationally for obvious reasons. I want to know if BioDome is a cult comedy classic in like France or something like that. Like, who knows? Like, it was Pauley Shore popular in France, like David Hasselhoff is popular in Germany. I have no idea. Maybe that's something we should look into. But BioDome. 1996. That was 25 years ago, and we finished our post-mortem of BioDome. 2 movies down in this experiment of over 200 movies from 1996. I don't know why I started doing this, but I'm excited. I'm into it. Our next episode is going to cover Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood. And I've got some special guests I'm going to reveal soon for that episode coming up. But I want to thank James Fox and Jeff Frumess for doing the show tonight. We went over an hour on BioDome. I never thought I'd be able to do that, but I enjoyed every minute of it. And James has impressed me with his BioDome fandom. And Jeff always comes out of left field with these movie remakes that just blow my mind. So thank you guys for doing this. And go ahead and let everybody know where you can find,
if you like
where they
all
can
my
find you
batshit
and,
sort
and your
of
work.
takes and crazy film observations, I do all this stuff on my YouTube channel. Just search Frumess, 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 or youtube.com/C/Frumess Films LLC. And please subscribe. And if you're into the Misfits, we do a Misfits. We just do a bunch of podcast stuff. So check that out.
All right. And for me, the thing I'm probably most excited about right now is my debut novel I just published last week, which I'm super excited about. You can get details on all of that at my brand new personal website, thejamesfox.com. Or I pretty much on Facebook 24/7 at facebook.com/JamesBFoxOfficial.
And we're back here in the present. So what did you think? BioDome. Love it or hate it? Let us know on social media what you think about BioDome, what you think about our opinions. James Fox, a very brave soul, defending BioDome to the death, pretty much. I have huge respect for James for sticking to his guns. A lot of times people would say, oh, I love that movie. And then as the conversation continues, they'll be like, hey, you know what? It was a dumb movie. He stuck to his guns and he still loves BioDome. I appreciate that. There are a lot of films that are not well regarded that I love, so I can't talk myself. But I can defend why I didn't like it, and I think I did that pretty well too. So again, wherever you stand on the BioDome spectrum, we salute you. So we're still in the midst of January 12th, 1996. 6 big releases that year. We're going to cover the third one on our next episode. We have 2 huge guests, filmmakers John Hale of Conduit and Nicholas Champeau from Lieutenant Jangles. We'll be talking about Don't Be a Menace to South Central While Drinking Your Juice in the Hood, a very funny 90s spoof that some might have missed out on or have forgotten about altogether that you probably should check out again. But I'll leave it at that. Don't forget to check us out on social media, The Real 96 Podcast. You can email us at thereal96podcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions, suggestions, you want to check in and see if we're going to cover a specific film, you want to volunteer for a guest, or you want to volunteer yourself as a guest, I'd love to read it. I'd love to check it out. I'll let you know my thoughts. So thank you very much for sticking with us. We're going to roll on. We've got 200 films to cover, 2 down, 198 to go. You've got a lot of content to binge with the Real 96 Podcast. Now go watch a movie.
You've been listening to the Real 96 Podcast, recorded in the bustling metropolis of Midlothian, Virginia. This show is a Genre Blast production. Now go watch a movie.